The genesis of Darkroom, to be honest with you, came about because we went to a party with the financiers of Room 6.
And the feeling was that that film really worked, and we had a great cast, and people loved the way it turned out. So it was like, give us a companion piece.
I'd had the idea that someone could experience their own repressed memories as a bystander, and then only find out at the end that they was inside his own mind.
And I had this script I was toying with about a white-collar guy who has this family who says he's going off every day to work.
Have a good one.
But he's really like the serial killer. And I said, you know what, this might be a good opportunity to combine these two ideas. You know, meeting of the minds. It was an interesting story, this relationship between the kid and the escaped inmate, and the red herrings that involved, whether this guy was really crazy and murdering people or not.
When you make movies at this budget level, there are two things you like to stay away from: children and animals. And we had both in this movie. We had dogs, we had kids, we had naked ladies, we had lots of things.
We were starting to read kids, and we were having some real problems because you need a kid, at least at our budget, who's 18 or older, or an emancipated minor, which basically means they can work without a studio teacher and without the reduced hours. And, you know, Mike really had it in his head that this would be Henry Thomas and E.T. and wanted somebody younger.
So the casting process was quite a challenge with trying to sell our director and other producers on the fact that we should get someone who was 18 years old to play the young Stanley role. And they were not sold until we met Sean Piper from Desperate Housewives.
I've done a few, like, you know, little parts and stuff, but this was my first leading character in a feature film now.
Mike was concerned because, you know, Sean is at that age where, you know, he has a lot of success and a lot of money all of a sudden. So he's cool, you know, he's a cool kid, he's happening. And he was a little concerned that he couldn't be as dorky and sort of uncomfortable in his own skin as he should be, you know, and even in the audition he came across as a little too cool for school. And so we sort of really had to talk to him and say, you know, I know that you want to be cool, but you got to fight that instinct and sort of be a little bit of a loser.
He's not the coolest kid, but, you know, he has a kind heart and like, you know, will befriend anyone who's willing to listen to him.
The other roles we had a little trouble casting.
You know, the real key with this is making the relationship interesting and then, you know, also protecting the twist. And to do that, I thought we needed a really interesting cast, and we have a fairly eclectic cast on this. So the first person we got was actually Lucy Lawless.
Hey, sweetheart.
I had taken Mike and a few other people to the Saturn Awards, which is the Academy of Science Fiction, Fantasy, and Horror. Lucy Lawless was one of the presenters.
So naturally, who should we use for drunken mother? But that woman, as I was propping up the bar.
I'm speculating here, but I would imagine that because she played a strong character for so long on Xena, she really embraced the idea of playing a weak, battered character.
I took it in order to go somewhere. That's a little scary because as an actor, if you've never done it before, you're not sure you can really pull it off. I like people who are sort of morally on the edge and at the end of their tether. That really appeals to me. She wasn't a woman who was on her way down. She was a woman who was already finished. I made sure that my hair was as nasty as I could get it, like more brassy than it is now, and I got those hideous fake nails that just look bad on my hands, right? I just look like some bloody clawed creature.
It's just a terrible story. Found the body of a young girl out by that new housing development.
Go back to clipping coupons, okay? You read stories like that, it'll keep you up all night.
The idea of Greg Grunberg's character, he was basically, you're very attracted to strong women, but you're attracted to strong women so you can break them down and turn them into weak women. That's what you do.
You drunk already, Cheryl? Huh?
You're finding these strong, sort of spunky young girls, and you're reducing them to the level of animals, because that's interesting to you. And then when they become so animalistic and broken down, you're slitting their throats, and you're starting on someone else.
You know, I've always been this good guy, everyone's sort of confidant on the other parts that I've played, both in movies and TV, so it was a nice opportunity.
My brother just made a film, and I did second unit with my brother, and we were talking to the producer, and he was a friend of Greg Grunberg's from school days. And I just told him we just cast Greg Grunberg and what he'd done in our film, and he couldn't believe it. He said, you crazy? You cast Greg as that?
The bitch has gotta go.
You know, if you don't want to really tell the audience who the bad guy is right up front, cast me, because hopefully no one's going to see that coming. You know, these types of abusive men, deep down, they're just cowards, I think. They've got blinders on. They don't see any of the social cues or, you know, the right and wrong of it. It's just, this is going to happen, and the smiling face that they may put on to kind of recruit or suck that victim in very quickly leaves.
I think that's obviously what lets on for Stanley, you know, to start scoping him out a little more.
Everything my character does is trying to catch her husband's interest, which is why she's so annoying to him, I think. You know, she's always walking on eggshells, trying to make things nicey nice, and we all know how repulsive that is. He's also a psychopath, but that's beside the point.
What's interesting is that Terry O'Quinn, who I've worked with on Lost and Alias, played the stepfather, and that was such a creepy role, and that was one of the performances that I tried to model this character after. Because, you know, he kills his whole family, and then he whistles, hi-ho, it's off to work I go, and he walks down this tree-lined street, and that, to me, was so incredibly creepy that they're among us.
No, I cannot go out tonight.
The idea of living in a house full of screaming parents, I mean, a lot of people can relate to that.
We actually played it off-screen for Sean in the other room. If you make too much of a deal out of it, it's not real. I mean, when my wife and I argue, we don't even look at each other. You know, we've got 3 kids. We're all over the house.
I was able to, like, one-up him. It was like, get away, what are you? You fag! Are you a fag? You know? I don't know if it'll ever make the cut.
Obviously, the whole story essentially takes place through the little boy's eyes, has to by definition, especially when you understand the twist is. So we had to be very careful to play everything from his perspective. One version of Stanley has to be in every scene. Otherwise, you know, whose story is it?
Hey.
We'd gone to a bunch of people for the man, and a lot of people, because he was passive and reactive by nature, didn't respond to the character, and we were supposed to start shooting, you know, and again, at this budget, you can't push because you got to pay the crew every day.
You know, when we first started out, we hadn't even cast the man yet, and we were already working, and I was like, oh no, what's going on here?
It was mentioned the name of Reed Diamond, literally the day before we had to have this actor, and I said, I really liked Reed Diamond on Homicide.
At 10:30 p.m., I had my meeting, and I thought maybe, you know, we're going to see if I was going to do it or not do it, and I guess I was already doing it in their minds.
He said, so when does the movie start? A couple weeks? Like, no, it starts tomorrow. Didn't your agent tell you? And it was like, no.
And they said, can you be here or be at work tomorrow in the ass end of the valley at 6 a.m., and I had a 7-page scene.
He says, you know, I'd really like to, but I don't know if, you know, I'll be prepared. In fact, we'd lost a couple people because they didn't think a week was enough time to prepare. And he said, you know, it'd be a challenge. It'll be fun. I'm not afraid to challenge. We're like, go, you go, girl.
This is where his New York training came in handy, no doubt.
I had my wife drop me off at work, and I've just learned my scenes. I was like, I don't know. I think I've made a terrible, terrible mistake. So I went to the director, and I said, Sean and I are supposed to be the same guy, and I've got blue eyes, and Sean's got brown eyes. He's like, no problem, mate, no problem. He's like, we'll get you brown contacts, and we just put them in for the last scene. And so for like, if you're interested, you can watch the movie and see when my eyes are blue and when my eyes are brown.
The thing that Mike kept doing was, in the beginning, whenever they would hand out the script, we would read it, and then, you know, immediately he'd go to you, and he was like, oh, yo, who do you think the man was? There
were two different notions we were trying to explore or fool people with. The first and the most obvious one is that Reed is a killer, and that Reed has done these horrible things in his past he can't remember, and these girls are dying because he killed them, which is a complete false notion, but we wanted to create that quite carefully. And the other notion was much more subtle, but a lot of people fell for it. We wanted to create the sense that by saying that Sean's real father had disappeared before Sean could remember him properly, a lot of people just naturally cottoned on and assumed that the twist would be that Reed was Sean's father.
Also, for my character, he doesn't know. I don't know. I don't know that he's me. I realized that in the last moment.
There's so many twists and turns in the Darkroom, and I remember at the beginning when I first read the script and I brought it up to Mike and Mark, I said, you know what, my concern is that you're giving away the fact that I'm the bad guy. And the truth is, who cares? There are so many other huge reveals in this movie, the biggest of which being that, you know, Reed and Sean are the same character, and that I don't think anybody sees coming.